Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Thursday, the 28th of December. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined this morning by Joshua Barry. How's it going, Joshua?
Yeah, good day. A bit better than you this morning, it seems.
Yeah, I was feeling a tad fragile this morning. I was out last night in Warrington for a few jars, as you do over the festivities. So yeah, it's a young man's game, Joshua. That's all I'm saying. So. Not feeling tip-top this morning, so hopefully we can get through it. Get your questions in, folks. We're going to answer as many of them as possible, of course, with the Old Firm game looming large on Saturday. Get your questions in, myself and Joshua. We'll answer as many as we possibly can. Of course, it was great being on yesterday after the news broke that the game last night was called off due to the adverse weather. Johnny was on a bumper show, around 70 minutes we were on for, which is quite something. So thank you to each and every one of you for joining us on that show yesterday. How are we feeling today, Joshua? You're still up north, aren't you?
Still up north, yeah. And I think the roads are now clear. So if it had been today, Derek, it might have been a different story for the game. But that was, I think, even reflecting on it last night, I do think that if you'd spoke to Philippe Clement last night, he'd have wanted the game played. Obviously, had to change your schedule. Presume that they'd have trained over the course of that as well. And you want to try and keep the conditioning where it would have been had Rangers played a game, but without risking injuries. I know you would ideally want to go there 2 points behind, so you have that threat of potentially being able to go top. I think that psychological thing element does play into games, but Rangers have just played so much football, I think probably more than anyone else. I can't really remember the last midweek they had, Derek. Probably well before the Betis game, maybe even before the last international break. So I think to have that option of a few days in between probably won't hurt players before such a big game coming up on the weekend.
Yes, absolutely. Just incidentally on that game, if you didn't catch the show yesterday, folks, it was called off because Ross County were unable to get down to Glasgow. Now, the Ross County chairman, Roy McGregor, has insisted the decision to postpone the game was taken by the SPFL. He's explained the call-off decision was out of their hands. He said that it was an SPFL call. It was neither Rangers or Ross County's decision to call the game off. It was really unfortunate for us because it was a game we wanted on. We missed a game last week. Hibs he was talking about, so we wanted to play this game. Unfortunately, it was out of our hands. The SPFL made the decision after discussions with Police Scotland. The SPFL went to the police and they couldn't give us any guarantees that the roads would be clear to get down in time for the game. So the decision was made to call the game off. It was difficult for the fans, but what can we do when the road was shut? Rangers were also looking for an early call. There had a lot of people travelling long distances, and there are also their match day costs. So that is Roy McGregor who's speaking to the Daily Record with regards to that. Storm Gerrard wreaking havoc, particularly on the A9. So that game will be rearranged for a later date. And a bit of good news stemming from that game. Rangers donated the unused food from the game to the Simon Community Food Bank in Glasgow. Rangers CEO James Bisgrove said, well, of course, everyone at Rangers was hoping for tonight's match to go ahead. We are very keen to support Glasgow's homeless community with a donation of some of the unused food from our sold-out hospitality suites and kiosks. We are extremely proud of our community roots at Rangers, and we felt this was the least we could do, particularly at this time of year. I'd like to thank our partners, Levy, for their excellent support in making this possible. So a nice little story there to emerge from the game being called off last night, Joshua.
Yeah, I think the right thing to do, and putting a good spin on an unfortunate situation. Food that I'm sure lots of food that would probably have gone to waste. So yeah, well done for that decision, for thinking fast on it and probably getting it to people who need it, especially this time of year. So yeah, one positive, I'm sure a lot of people would have liked the game to play, Derek. I'm sure a lot of people didn't mind also staying in the house probably and watching football on the telly last night. But yeah, that was definitely one positive to come out last night.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, let's get to a few of the questions that are coming in. There's a load of them. Day in the Life says, any news on injuries, lads? We'll get an update, I'd imagine, tomorrow when we hear from Clement ahead of that game on Saturday. Fingers crossed that Connor Goldson can make it. We know hopefully it was just precautionary when he came off at Fir Park last weekend. Others that you're hopeful of returning, John Lundstrom is one. Ryan Jack, we've not seen for a number of weeks now. Whether he returns, it remains to be seen. Is there any others you think we might see on Saturday, Joshua? Cifuentes, perhaps?
But Cifuentes was walking about in a moon boot after the Cup final, so unless he wants to play with that on, you never know. Clement, I think Clement does play these things close to his chest, but he's not really had a curveball so far. He's not had a player kind of come back early from injury, really, for us to refer back to. But for example, say there was a player going to be back for the field for him, and there was a good chance, I don't think he'd go out of his way to say that, and I think that's quite good often, because you want to keep the opposition in the dark as much as possible. If Ryan Jack is back available, he's not played since before that international break. Are you going to throw him in from the start? I'd be surprised. Rangers, just like they did with the Cup final, will have had this game bookmarked for a while, and knowing, I'm sure that when players are coming back from injury, someone like Jack, for example, there might be a hint of realism, and you think, do you know what, he's probably not going to be able to play a lot of games before the winter break. Let's just focus on trying to get 60 minutes out of him for this game. But then if he's not played any minutes before that, how realistic is that really, Derek? I don't know. And Goldson is the one where it looked precautionary. Just to my eye, it didn't look as if he was coming off and he was seriously injured. So you hope that he is. You hope he's fine, because, as we said yesterday, Rangers' defence without Connor Goldson, we've seen enough evidence to suggest that it's always weaker. You remember the game, the 3-2 game between Celtic and Rangers in April, maybe, where Goldson, he was injured, but he actually went to the game, and he was photographed before walking in by PA, and everyone thought, oh great, he's gonna start, and he was just in the squad. He was just there as kind of a bit of a Trojan horse. So fingers crossed that he's available for that game. But as you say, tomorrow when people speak to Philippe Clement, I think that's when we'll get a better idea about injuries.
Yes, let's get to some other questions that are coming, some interesting ones. First of all, Charlie Penman says, morning troops, I'm over from Florida and totally ticked off at missing that game last night and really missing the Florida sunshine. Gutted for you, Charlie, but unfortunately weather put paid to that one last night. Ian Thompson with the pressing question here, Joshua. Have you had an Ibrox pie, lads? I can't remember the last time I've had a pie at Ibrox. It must be some time. You must have had one recently.
Yeah, you have them in the press room when you were up recently, did you not know? Not really too studious working at half time.
Yeah, I couldn't make it down. It was so busy, I didn't make it down in time. So
I know that. I think the point Ian will be making is, was it the pies that are getting donated? But I'm sure, as the statement said, some food from hospitality as well. But I've had good ones and bad ones, Derek.
Yeah. Right, let's get to some more questions. An interesting one from Ian Edwards. He says, does the manager have a dilemma in choosing between Dill and Sterling, providing Lundstrom is fit? I think Lundstrom would come in for Dill, Joshua. Would you agree?
Yeah, as Dill's done really well, and I think it's kind of gone under the radar a bit, Derek, because he was so far out of the picture, or he looked so far out of the picture. You remember Clement gave that answer. He was asked at a press conference maybe a month ago, where is he? Is he still around? And he kind of said, yeah, he's training hard, a lot of competition in this position. And it was one time in a press conference so far where I've thought, I don't know if he's saying, I don't know if that's telling the whole story. Normally with Clement, I feel like you just kind of see what you get in a situation, but I didn't know if that naturally it was one of these situations where a manager thinks that a player does not have a future and therefore has to kind of give some PR answer to bide the time over. But I think in the two games he's played, obviously the goal against Motherwell is kind of a standout moment for him, but against St Johnstone as well, he did put in I thought a pretty good overall central midfield performance, and that's not a role that he's played all that much, similar to Tom Lawrence. And yes, it's still midfield. Yes, it maybe doesn't differentiate that much on the ball, but playing as the deepest midfielder, the one who's taking the ball off the centre halves and kind of dictating play, is different from even the role that Kieran Dowell was signed to play at Rangers. With that said, if Lundstrom was fully fit, I don't think there's any question that he comes in to play the base midfield, and I think you want Sterling's physicality and his ability to carry the ball. Pardon me, his defensive just Nous just in the middle of the pitch. He's not going to be the one who spins and takes the ball in the middle. He's not going to pass the ball or open up a defence like Dill. But for the type of game it's going to be, you'd imagine that Celtic as a home team will be aggressive, more aggressive than Rangers were in their home game way back in the end of start of August, which feels like, or September maybe it was, feels like an absolute lifetime ago. So I think you'd want Sterling in there. Will Lundstram be fully fit to start? We'll find out tomorrow. Wouldn't be surprised if he was back in some contention. I think you'd guarantee, Derek, that if he's got a sniff of being ready to start or of being able to play, he would do. But I don't know about you, but I'd definitely go Sterling in there if Lundstram was able to start the game.
Yeah, I would totally go Sterling and Lundstram if that were the options available. Tommy Scott says, a few years ago, John McDonald used to pass his pies back to our seats. Great lad. Yeah, he absolutely is. That is fantastic stuff, Tommy. Not only great on the pitch, but good to see that he's helping the punters out as well at Ibrox with regards to the pies. Right, Mark, John Park with a point here. He says, we'll discuss this more in detail tomorrow, I'd imagine, Joshua, but he says, how will we set up at the weekend, lads? I think Rangers need to go and be aggressive, Joshua. None of this sitting back. I know it's going to be difficult with the atmosphere. It's going to be pretty toxic, but I think Rangers need to just go out and try and block out the noise as best they can and take the game to Celtic. This is a Celtic team I think are gettable.
Yeah, I mean, I watched their game, Celtic's game against Dundee, and I thought they were good. I know Johnny was saying yesterday they were slightly fortuitous in the way that they scored, but they do seem to have kind of got over that blip. But I think that those two games show that I think it's quite clear that they're not as strong in opposition as last year. Probably, if you look at the games they've played and the points they've lost, I don't think many people, Celtic fans, would probably disagree with that. So therefore, and I don't think that the intensity from the start will be quite the same. Rangers will still have to withstand things at points, but there's no reason that I think they shouldn't be aggressive. You're right, Derek. They're in keeping with how they've played so far. Expect them to go quite direct to Seam at points and keep him as high as possible. That's a real threat if you're a defence that wants to push up. We spoke about Dessers yesterday and the need for him to have a big game, but he's not going to hold the ball up really. He dropped in quite a lot against Motherwell, but he's not someone who's going to get you up the pitch. So Rangers will have to be clever in how they do that. They'll need to use the bench well. I think they'll start Ross McCausland on the right hand side. I think it'll be more of the same. If you look at how Rangers played away at Real Betis, for example, aggressive in the right moments when they could press, not sitting too deep in and around their box and playing wherever possible, but playing forward quite directly, quite vertically, and that's just, they've done that at home, Derek, as well. Don't think that's an outlier. Don't think you'll see too much of a tailored difference to this game overall, because they should be. I know they've not had the game last night, which hasn't allowed them to continue this vein of form, but Clement, 16 games he's been now, or 17 maybe, all unbeaten, two draws, or 3 draws off the top of my head. It's a long way from that Hearts game where Rangers were 1-0 down going into extra time, and you were thinking this is potentially a kind of season definer for them, because I think Celtic could drop points that day, and it was just another example of Rangers' inability to get things over the line. But it's been a real change since then, and I think it's important to try and to notice that, especially considering that Clement is working with, as we just discussed, a midfield trio there, even if Lundstram is back, who no one would have anticipated at the start of the season. So I expect them to be confident with that in mind, be quite aggressive, similar setup to Real Betis away. More than anything, don't actually have many options to throw a curveball, do they?
No, we certainly don't. It's a puzzle, as Philip Clement likes to call it, that he has to solve for this game at the weekend. Peg McPhail raises the point and says the Union Bears are going to give our boys a good send-off from Ibrox Extra Fuel. Yes, absolutely. They tweeted a message yesterday saying they'll be at Ibrox at 10 a.m. To cheer on the players as they make their way across the city to that game at Parkhead. So, even though we're not going to be in the stadium as such, it's good to see the Union Bears are giving the players a good send-off heading over there. So, I think that will be extra fuel, Peggy. Interesting. Well, Mark Lawson raises a point here. I just had a quick check at the Met Office there. I think the game will be going ahead. He says, morning, guys. Heavy snow forecast for Glasgow and surrounding area on Saturday. Will the game go ahead? Let's hope it does, Joshua. I don't want too many games getting called off. I know Rangers.
I think it will, because it won't be a pitch issue, really, will it? And yesterday was because of there was still games on in the Central Belt yesterday, wasn't there? So I'd imagine it'll be fine, especially for a game like that. I think all parties will be pulling together to make sure it happens.
Yeah, Denzel says this is a weak Celtic side. The best players are struggling for form, and the defence is often shambolic despite the atmosphere. It's time to make a statement at the weekend. Let's hope Rangers do just that. There's an interesting point I wanted to bring up as well, just on the left back situation. We discussed this on the bumper show yesterday, where Johnny explained why he would look for a buyer for Ridvan in January. He's not having him. Adam with the point: do you think it'll be Ridvan or Barisic on Saturday? It depends on Barisic's fitness. Josh, I was surprised not to see him at Fir Park. If he's fit and available, I'd play him. I know that people will have reservations because he has had a few howlers at Parkhead in the past.
Yeah.
But Ridvan or Barisic, who are you picking?
I think if a game was to suit Ridvan, it probably would be this one, because I don't think Celtic are really going to, in the same way as a team lower down the table would, I don't think they're going to try and progress the ball by just sticking a big forward on Ridvan and trying to get the ball forward. So in a sense, I think it might suit him a little bit more, but it probably will be Barisic if there's the option, because that's who Clement's tended to favour so far. Again, it's maybe one of these situations where he doesn't play the other day, where it's just trying to wrap him in cotton wool for that fixture. As you say, he's had more than one difficult game at Celtic Park. There's a few good ones as well, but more than one difficult game. I think if you look at the defensive record, Clement will want to, he want to limit the change in that area as much as possible. And we spoke at length about Ridvan the other day. I think one of his issues has been consistency of selection, and then his availability comes into that as well, Derek. But also the fact that I don't think playing as a high, wide, crossing fullback necessarily suits him. I don't think he's done enough to really solidify in those 18 months. Yes, he's your first choice left back in all situations, in all circumstances, and you have no more concerns in that area. Equally, I don't think he's had a consistent run of games to really show that. And as mentioned, I think he's quite a different style of fullback to Barisic, and probably will play better when he's got others around him, when he can move inside the pitch. He can stay high at points as well, because he's comfortable. It comes naturally to him, as we discussed with the Dessers assist as well. I think it'll be Barisic though if he's fully fit though, Derek. I imagine you would probably think the same.
Yeah. I think I would pick Barisic as well. Maka with an interesting point here on Todd Cantwell. Morning, Maka says, Cantwell play as a 10 or to mark McGregor as he's done before? I think Cantwell will be huge for Rangers at the weekend. Should Philip Clement give him license to roam, Joshua, or is it a man marking job, do you think, the best option?
I think he'll do both. Off the ball, if you look at the way Rangers are pressing, it's quite often it's heavily man-for-man focused, and quite often fully man-for-man focused in certain phases when they press. So we'd expect Cantwell to be there. And if you think back, I know it's a different game, different styles. Both teams are in different places. But and Michael Beale spoke about this after the Old Firm game, the 1-0 defeat Rangers suffered at the start of the season, which ultimately really, I think, cost him his job. The way that Rangers pressed that day gave McGregor so much license, so much freedom. And yes, you can say in hindsight that maybe the way they pressed should have got them that goal when Dessers, the foul was taken back for Dessers and Roof had put the ball into the back of the net. But outside of that, Celtic were able to really fashion good opportunities and not put under, I think, sufficient pressure for what that type of crowd demanded. I'm sure that Celtic won't stand off Rangers in that same way. And I know it's not cut and dry, because Rangers are trying to put them under pressure in their own right that way, Derek. But anyone who watched it, anyone who was there that day, I think will sense that this just isn't the right approach. You've got to, I think, appease the crowd on a day like that and be seen to go at them a little bit more. And one of the chief beneficiaries of that, I think, was McGregor, who I don't think arrived into that game in great form. But everyone knows he's a player who's got real quality. So if you give him space, especially at the base of midfield, to try and dictate things, probably take advantage of that. And Rangers can't allow that tomorrow. They can't set off too much, because I think that Celtic do have good players in the final third. They have a few players who are in form in the final third. And as mentioned, when we were speaking about their approach a few minutes ago, I expect them to press aggressively when they get their opportunities in that kind of man-for-man fashion, which would leave Cantwell in the middle. He'll be huge for Rangers, Derek. I've said quite often, I think he is Rangers' best player, and still think he needs over a concerted period of time to in that number 10 position
Yeah.
To really show that. But I think if you're looking at a player, if you're looking at overall quality, who's got the most of their game, who can really run games, and we saw that at points last season. This is the time where you need to kind of step up and be influential, because there's a lack of players around you who are going to really be able to do that, especially in the middle of the pitch. So you need a big performance from Cantwell on and off the ball. And yeah, I think we've seen in the past that he can do that job. So I'd expect, as Maka says, him to be given freedom on the ball and given the license to create for Rangers. But then when they don't have the ball, to play that disciplined role of trying to stop McGregor getting on the ball.
Yeah, Jim McGregor with a point on Cantwell says Cantwell will be important as long as he doesn't get too wound up and get sent off. Hopefully he just stays on the right side of the line. William with the point here, he says, what do you guys think about the ref appointment? The man in the middle on Saturday will be Nick Walsh. He'll be assisted by Graham Stewart and Callum Spence. It will be Willie Collum on VAR, and his assistant Daniel McFarlane. Kevin Clancy will be the fourth official. I think Nick Walsh is pretty decent. He's one of probably the better referees, I would say, Joshua. I don't have any qualms about the officials, do you? I just hope we're not talking about them after the game.
Nah, but I also think sometimes that the attention on officials doesn't help the overall situation. So, I think at times the bar isn't obviously that high. It's a much wider discussion about referees, full-time refereeing. But I think to the other extreme, Derek, sometimes the rhetoric around the whole situation doesn't help as well. So I think he's one of the better ones. So yeah, I don't know what much there else is to say about it. I hope we're not talking about refereeing decisions either. As you know me, I absolutely hate talking about refereeing decisions and find them incredibly boring and tend to not anyway. But it's a big game, but he's managed a lot of big games before anyway. So good luck to him.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to need it. There's an interesting point as well, just harping away from the game at the weekend and looking ahead to next month. We discussed this in great detail yesterday, but Andy raises a point here. He says, aside from Shankland and the Van Veen curveball, are there any realistic striker suggestions you'd like to see us go for next week? I would imagine Niels Coppen and Philip Clement and the likes are working extremely hard on identifying targets and bringing them in next month. Joshua, who they are, I'm not sure. But yeah, I'd imagine Rangers will be looking to bring bodies in as soon as possible, possibly for the head out to Spain. I'm not entirely sure the date they head out there for the winter training camp.
Very start of the second week of January. Yeah, I can't remember what that date is off the top of my head.
So I think it would be beneficial if they get any new recruits in for that winter training camp.
So I'm caught. I've still got this horrible cough.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think that Coppen, as we spoke about again yesterday, there's a clear change. Rangers have not went and got a director of football recruitment, Derek, that specialises in the British market. Shankland, the links are obvious, and deservedly obvious. I mean, I watched the game last night, and for 90 minutes, I thought he didn't have his best game, and then he pulls that finish out the bag, which was just a ridiculous way to win that game. Van Veen, don't think it's going to happen. And in terms of curveballs, other options you'd like to see Rangers go for. Well, I said yesterday, Derek, that I think that the Coppen appointment should tie in with Rangers looking to access more undervalued markets in the way that they've not done before, not just looking to England too readily. And I hope that this is the start of it. Last January, again, as we spoke about last night, was a perfect window, I think, really for Rangers, because it raised their level, it addressed problem areas of the squad, and it secured long-term valuable assets in Cantwell and Raskin. That's the type of thing you want. Again, I think Rangers need a midfielder as well as a striker, probably. I think the left-back issue is something they can manage until the end of the season. I think ideally you'd want another wide attacker as well, someone who can play maybe on both wings, but January is a notoriously difficult window, as everyone always says around this time of year. So I would like to see curveballs, and I think that is more likely now because of the type of markets that Rangers are going to look for. With Niels Coppen, I guess the question is how much work can be done before a window like January, because I'm sure he'll be doing work behind the scenes, but he only officially starts, I think, on the 2nd of January, so that doesn't give you much of a head start. But yeah, I think especially moving into the summer window, you're going to see more players linked with Rangers who you maybe haven't heard of before. And for me, Derek, I think there's a balance. I think you do need to look at the market you're in and players who know your league, like Shankland, like players like Lewis Ferguson in the past, and others that we've referenced. I think you do need to look at that, but that's right on your doorstep, and that maybe doesn't always take a director of football recruitment to spot those players. It can maybe become quite obvious. What I think you do need is someone to head up a more modern scouting network that tries to get Rangers ahead for the big fish in the small pond they are domestically, trying to punch upwards in Europe. And I think that's what you'll see more with Klopp, and hopefully going into the summer and beyond.
Yeah, John, with the point here, says, what kind of budget will we have to spend over the January window? Well, John Bennett recently said at the AGM that the summer spending won't affect what the manager has to spend in January. What that equates to, I have no idea, but he will have a bit of money to spend, I'd imagine. And it remains to be seen what happens. I mean, there might be some outgoings as well, Joshua. We discussed it yesterday on the show. I wouldn't be surprised if one or two were heading out of the Ibrox exit door as well, perhaps possibly permanently, whether it's on loan or not, who knows. But I think there's going to be a bit of movement, both incomings and outgoings in January. Of that, there is no doubt. And let's hope Rangers end the window. Giovanni Van Bronckhorst always used to say this: as long as you end the window stronger than you went into it, then jobs are good, as they say.
Yeah, but I think it's quite clear as well. Clement has not complained once about. He's been frustrated about the injury situation, but he, as a manager, could have come in and he could have said, "Look, the squad's been built for a different manager. There's good players here, etc., etc." But that comment that he made at the AGM, and anyone who was at the AGM will remember, it was in the kind of Q&A he did with Joe Potter, where he said, look, it's imbalanced and something else along those lines. He's not really said that at all in his press conferences. He's not tried to play to the gallery. He clearly wants to work with the players he's got. But with that said, Derek, his chances will improve if you give him players more suited to his style of play. Now, that's not to say that you completely tailor the squad to his style. Again, we've been through this before with Rangers, where it's been, and that's why you have the squad as it was last season and as it has been this season, where it's kind of built for a very specific even formation. And then when injuries start to occur, when a manager comes in and wants to play with wingers, you suddenly have no options. So there does need to be a general, I think, consensus about what type of player you're going for. It's not just about signing players that Clement wants. And again, if you speak to people who've worked with him, if you listen to him, he's not someone who's, I think, going to want to identify all the targets himself. He'll have worked with directors of football and in that kind of a club-wide recruitment methodology for a long time. But he needs players who are suited to his style of play. He needs a central midfielder. He needs someone else who can play up top, especially if that African Cup of Nations situation materialises, as we discussed yesterday. I think he's worked exceptionally well with what he's had so far, and logic would tell you if you get him a little bit more quality in certain areas, then he's going to be able to make the most of it. I'm interested to see as well how the style of play develops over January, because I do think the Rangers have, although they've got results so far, I think there's some elements of their play, especially in the middle of the park, that they need to kind of evolve, and a few more options that they need that they haven't been able to, because they've had no time to train. No. But going forward, I'm interested to see how Clement's kind of style of play materialises, because the piece we did with his former assistant, Johan van Roomst, who'd worked with him ever since he became a manager, so he knows him and his style of play pretty well. Some really interesting details he told us about a training camp and what it entails about Clement. He'll take a long chunk of time to have a kind of one-on-one with each player, with the staff, very intentional about trying to get to know them, trying to tailor their individual development program to players that they like, they might have watched growing up. And then on his style of play, he was saying, look, I can see what he wants it to be so far. With a few more rotations, it's just not there yet. So I think there's a lot of interesting things to come out of that January training camp, Derek, and we're going to be there as well. So we'll bring people lots and lots of coverage from Spain. Yeah,
fantastic. They're taking on Hertha Berlin, closed doors friendly as well over there. And then they come back. We've got Copenhagen at Ibrox on the 16th, I think, is it, Joshua?
Yeah,
Copenhagen?
Tuesday night, I think. And I think the Hertha Berlin game is, I think you can watch it on Rangers TV, even if it's behind closed doors.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
Could be wrong, but I think I heard that.
Yeah, super. Hugh Yates is just rubbing it in. He says, sitting at the pool watching from sunny Tenerife. But good to have you tuning in, Hugh. Not jealous whatsoever. Right, we'll wrap up there. Huge thanks to Josh. Just a quick word for our podcast sponsors, as ever. The MPH Group, they've got a fantastic winter boiler promotion on just now with brilliant, they've got a 12-year parts and labour warranty, flexible finance options as well. So if you want to upgrade your home or looking for a new boiler this winter, then give these guys a call. The all-important links are in the description below. Right, we're off for now. We will be back tomorrow to begin the big look ahead to that game on Saturday. We'll have the press conference tomorrow as well, folks, so we should have a clearer picture of who is available. Right, until then, enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Bye for now.